Hey there. Tonight's stories are about regular people in impossible situations. Stories so wild they sound made up. But they're all true. In one, a desperate entrepreneur walks into a casino with barely enough cash to survive and leaves with just enough to change history. Another story begins with a drunk guy ranting at a party and ends with him landing a Hollywood role. And in the last, a woman finds a crumpled page in a trash can, and it becomes the spark for one of the most famous horror novels ever written. What do you do when a moment of total failure suddenly becomes your shot at everything you ever wanted? During a hot summer night in 1974, a man named Fred walked into a buzzing casino in Las Vegas. He was in his 30s, looking sharp but tense because he wasn't here to have fun. He was here because he had nothing left to lose. Fred owned a small shipping company he had started 3 years earlier. At this point, he'd already lost more than $13 million. He had just come from a disastrous meeting with investors who told him they weren't giving him another dime. They didn't believe in him or his company's future. Now, with only $5,000 left across all his business accounts, Fred was facing disaster. He owed $24,000 in fuel bills alone and had nothing to pay his employees. The company was on the edge of bankruptcy. Standing inside the casino, Fred knew this move was reckless. He wasn't a gambler. But he also knew if he didn't act, the company was finished. So he did the only thing he could think of. He walked to a blackjack table, traded all his money for chips, and started to play. He started small. The first few hands went his way. Then he bet more, and kept winning. As the night went on, a crowd formed behind him, watching as he piled up chips. Fred didn't even notice. He was locked in. Every hand, life or death. Finally, with a huge stack of chips in front of him, Fred pushed it all in. One last hand. The dealer flipped the cards. Fred won. He walked out with $27,000, just enough to cover the fuel bill and keep the lights on a little longer. And with that brief extension, Fred finally landed the investment he needed, $1 million in new funding. That gamble turned his struggling company into a global empire. Fred's full name was Fred Smith. His little company? FedEx. Now for the second story. This one begins with a man who had just lost his job. By the end of the night, he would walk straight into the career that made him a household name, all by accident. Sometime in the late 1980s, a guy in his 20s named Norm walked into a house party in the Hollywood Hills. The place was packed with actors, producers, and people with million-dollar smiles. Norm didn't look like any of them. He had stringy long hair, worn-out clothes, and the tired energy of someone who didn't belong. He never would have gone to this kind of party if his day hadn't gone the way it did. That afternoon, Norm had gotten into it with his boss at the motorcycle shop where he worked. They already didn't get along, but today their usual friction boiled over. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and just like that, Norm was fired. Wandering the streets of LA, unsure of what to do, he ran into a friend who mentioned a party that night. "Come blow off some steam," the friend said. So now here he was, unemployed, out of place, but buzzed enough to stay. At first, the party was manageable. Norm stayed close to his buddy, drank a little, met a few people, but the sting of being fired kept bubbling up. Soon, he was pounding drink after drink, trying to wash away the anger. Instead, it just made things worse. Sloppy drunk and furious, Norm pushed through the crowd and climbed up to the second floor. From a balcony above the living room, he shouted for everyone to stop what they were doing and listen. He began ranting, loud, angry, and barely coherent. People turned and stared. His words didn't really make sense, but his voice carried. And somehow, he held the entire party captive. For a few minutes, everyone listened. When he finally finished, he stepped back, embarrassed and spent. Then, someone tapped him on the shoulder. He turned to find a stranger who said, "Have you ever acted in a play?" That stranger was a theater producer. He had been at the party, watching from the crowd, and had seen something most others didn't: charisma. Even drunk and rambling, Norm had a kind of raw presence. The way he commanded attention, even when he didn't know what he was doing, was exactly what the producer needed. He offered Norm a role in a small play. Norm had no acting experience and no desire to be in entertainment. But he also had no job. So he said yes. He showed up, did the play, and something clicked. He had natural talent. He was magnetic on stage. One role turned into two, then more. Eventually, he landed a lead role in one of the biggest television shows of its time. Norm's full name? Norman Reedus. That drunk guy at the party became Daryl Dixon on The Walking Dead. All right, time for the third and final story. This one doesn't start in a boardroom or on a Hollywood balcony. It starts inside a tiny trailer in New England, with a woman named Tabby and a trash can full of rejection letters. What she found in that trash changed horror fiction forever. In the late winter of 1973, Tabby was 23 years old. She lived with her husband and two kids, a baby boy and a toddler girl, in a beat-up double-wide trailer. Her husband worked as a high school teacher by day and at a laundromat by night. Tabby took care of the kids and picked up shifts at a local Dunkin' Donuts in the evening. They had no landline. They barely had enough to eat. But they shared a dream: to become writers. Over the years, they had written and submitted dozens of stories. Most of them came back marked, "No thanks." The rejections piled up. It was starting to feel like maybe this whole dream was a mistake. One evening, after putting the kids down for their naps, Tabby went into the back of the trailer to switch laundry from the washer to the dryer. That tiny laundry space also doubled as her husband's writing office. As usual, the area was a wreck. Beer cans, old food wrappers, stacks of rejection slips. Typical. The trash can beside the desk was overflowing with crumpled up pages. Annoyed, Tabby reached down to tie off the garbage bag. But as she bent over, something caught her eye. One of the papers in the trash had some writing on it, a typed page. She skimmed it. Then she stopped. The words pulled her in immediately. It was good. Really good. She knew her husband's writing inside and out, and she also knew she hadn't seen this one before. It was fresh, different, stronger. Curious, she pulled the paper from the trash and smoothed it out. She read the whole thing, just a few pages, and realized this wasn't just a good idea. This was the idea. Moments later, the front door opened. Her husband walked in, exhausted from work. Without a word, Tabby walked up to him holding the page. "What is this?" she asked. "Why haven't you shown me this?" He looked embarrassed. He explained that he had started writing something new, a story about a high school girl with a strange power. But he felt like he didn't know enough about girls or high school or anything to finish it. It felt too weird, too unlikely to sell. He had given up and thrown it away. And more than that, he had decided he was done with writing. It was too hard, too painful. He felt like a failure. He needed to focus on real income for the family. But Tabby didn't agree. She told him, "This is the one. This is what's going to break you through. I'll help you with the parts you don't understand. You just need to finish it." Reluctantly, he agreed. They spent months working together. The finished manuscript was completed in the spring of 1974. They sent it off to publishers, expecting more rejections. Then came the call. One major publisher wanted the book. Not only that, they were offering an advance of $400,000. In today's money, that's more than $2.5 million. Tabby and her husband were shocked. They accepted the deal. The book was published. They moved out of the trailer. They got a landline. But it didn't stop there. The book became a cultural phenomenon. That crumpled manuscript in the trash? It became Carrie, the breakout novel that launched one of the most iconic literary careers of all time. And Tabby's husband? That was Stephen King. Now it's your turn. Which of these stories hit you hardest? The desperate gamble, the accidental audition, or the trash that held a masterpiece? Each one proves a simple truth. The line between failure and success is often just one choice wide. Walk away or lean in. Whether it's a game of blackjack, a drunken rant, or a page no one else believed in, Sometimes all it takes is one moment to change your entire life. If this inspired you or made you see things differently, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who needs a little encouragement. You never know. Your moment might be one step away.